Hey guys, good morning. Winston, you're good. I'm in my home office and it appears that the overhead light is burned out. So anyway, I'm going to have to either jump up there and change it, get a ladder or something and change it, or beg David to do it for me. So it's Monday and I didn't go live the past couple days because I don't know what's going on with my fan. I didn't go live the past couple of days because I was with my mom and we were up in Boone. So I'm back home now. We had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. She had not seen the house since it was finished. She hadn't been there really since we broke ground. It's a good 2.5 hour drive. Good morning, Gail. It's a good 2.5 hour drive for her. And so I picked her up and we rode up together. So anyway, and then David and Grace came. So it was really, really nice. I enjoyed having that time. And I was thinking about it kind of this morning. So as you know, because I've talked about this a lot, David and I built what we call our retirement home, our retirement home in Boone. It's in the mountains of North Carolina on some property that my grandparents bought back in the 1960s. And so the land has been in my family for, like over 60 years now. And so anyway, David and I are fortunate enough to have the property, and we have saved and saved and saved and saved to make this happen. But as you can imagine, to make it happen, we've also had to take on some debt. And I was thinking about that this morning. He and I were kind of touching base, where we are with this, where we are with the other thing, and tuition. We have to pay tuition for the kids this summer, and, quarterly taxes, all the fun things that we all manage, right? And I was thinking about the debt and thinking about weight loss. And I'm one of those people, and I always have been, I cannot stand to carry a lot of debt. Like, it bothers me to owe money. Now, a mortgage is a little different because I could just kind of figure I'll die with a mortgage, right? I don't know. That's just Kristie's philosophy. But I think too, we're getting to like kind of an age where we both are looking forward to full retirement. David especially looking forward to full retirement. And so we're trying to balance, like, when can we get this paid and when can we get this paid, and still balancing kids' tuition and kids' credit card, and they're still pretty financially dependent on mom and dad. So anyway, this morning we talked briefly about moving some money from point A to point B, and I don't know if you guys do this, but I always feel like I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul sometimes. But I started thinking about that in terms of debt and diet and the way that we eat. And I know for me personally, it feels so good, like I said, to pay something off, right? To no longer have a car payment or a mortgage payment or whatever. But I think too, when I think about it for me, I also am very guilty of like going on to Amazon and being like, ooh, I love that bedding, or I need this like kitchen gadget, right? Or I'd like to have new pillows for the porch, especially this time of year. We're stopping at the plant place and buying plants. And even if they're in the clearance section at Lowe's, buying plants, buying pots to put plants in. Good morning, Debbie. Wanting to buy, all the things for the house, right? And so I was thinking about like that juxtaposition of, I want to save this money so I can pay off the debt, right? So we don't have the mortgage on the house. But at the same time, I want to go on Amazon and get the newest gadget. I'm trying to remember now what I was even looking at. Oh, plant stands. I was wanting some little plant stands just to raise my ferns off the porch so that the porch doesn't get damaged. And so I can convince myself that I need that, right? And I have an order coming today. Anyway, and I had shared with you guys that we had just like a terrible week with like David's car breaking down and having to pay that, and Grace needing a new laptop. There were all these different expenses. I had dishwasher broke, had to buy a new dishwasher. There were all these expenses that we hadn't counted on this month. But when I think about that with diet, so let's kind of switch over. It feels really good to lose weight, right? It feels really good. And when I say lose weight, I'm going to be really specific about that. It feels really good to lose fat, right? Because we want to preserve our lean muscle mass as much as we can. So it feels good to lose fat. It feels good to notice changes in our body composition, like we're wearing smaller clothes or we're able to do more. We have more physical energy because we're giving our body good nutrition. So that feels really good. But so that's like paying off the debt, right? We're staying on track. We're paying off the debt. We're getting rid of the fat, the stored fat. It feels good. But at the same time, just like me going on Amazon and wanting to buy all the things, at the same time, then we think, oh, I'd like to eat that, right? Whatever that is. And maybe it's just a high fat meal, or maybe it's a high carb meal that you've missed. It doesn't matter. But there's that juxtaposition of, I want to eat healthy. I want to be healthy. I want to feel good. Just like getting rid of the debt, right? I want to pay down the mortgage. I want to pay down the car, whatever debt you have. I want to pay down the credit card balance. It feels really good to get rid of that. But at the same time, it's like, ooh, sale, right? A sale on plants, a sale on clothes, a sale on shoes, a sale on bedding. I am the worst. And so anyway, but when I take that and I juxtapose it and look at diet, I think, it's kind of similar. Like I want to lose more weight, but I also want to have brisket and wings and ranch dressing, right? I think that for me, somehow, like things clicked along the way and I really don't miss the food aspect of it. Like I've kind of got that down, but I can see where people do actually really struggle with that, right? So anyway, I think, and I think we can also simmer this down to like a difference between like short-term gratification and long-term gratification. So I think I'm going to end up having to return some things today and give up that short-term gratification so I can keep my money in the bank and I can pay off the debt so that I don't have, because I don't know about you guys, but worrying about debt is no fun. Worrying about weight is also no fun. So anyway, that was kind of what was on my mind today. I'll probably write a little bit about that. The other thing that I wanted to share with you guys, I have, I've talked a lot about ultra processed foods, and I got a notification on my phone that distracted me, so I apologize. But I've talked a lot about ultra processed foods, and there's a new podcast out. I'll share it with you guys. And it was about a study that was done. And it was a randomized clinical trial, so it was an observational study, and a lot of the research on ultra-processed foods has been more epidemiological observational, which means people self-report kind of retroactively. And it's hard to tease out all the different factors that contribute to an outcome when that happens, right? So anyway, one of the things that this study, and they're talking about in the podcast, and I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the name of the podcast, but I'll link it here. So I'll do it as a post, and it's a free podcast. But one of the things they're talking about is this study where they had people do this research it was for 4 weeks. So for the first 2 weeks, they fed them a diet that was high in ultra processed foods. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, if you're not familiar, there's ultra processed, there's a NOVA classification scale. So a level 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 1 being food in its most pure form, the way it kind of comes from nature, right? Not factory, but nature. So an apple, right? Peanuts, raw peanuts, those would qualify as NOVA classification 1, right? Not processed at all. NOVA classification 4, which is the most highly processed, would be like peanut flavored something or apple flavored something. And those little puff things that we give kids, or apple flavored Cheerios, really doesn't have any apple in it. It's just flavored to taste that way. That would be NOVA classification 4. Something like applesauce would be a classification 2, right? And then because it has, it's processed, it's been changed from the whole form of an apple. And interestingly enough, the same thing with peanuts, raw peanuts versus roasted peanuts versus peanut butter, which could be NOVA classification 2 or 3. And what we know from that is really fascinating. This is different research, but what we know from that is when you eat peanuts, whole peanuts, not all of the fat and calories are absorbed. When you eat it as peanut butter, the researchers have called that like partially digested. So because it's already broken down, you actually get more calories and more fat, interestingly, from, I don't know about more protein, from those peanuts. Because it's, again, they call it partially digested. The same thing with applesauce. Applesauce would have more of a glycemic impact than a whole apple because with the peeling on it, because the peeling has that fiber that slows down the digestion, the way it's digested in the body, or the rate at which it's digested. Anyway, that was really interesting. But so in this study I'm talking about in the podcast, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of that podcast, but I will link it, I promise. But in the podcast, they took people and they fed them what would be considered healthy processed foods. So they weren't feeding them necessarily Doritos, but in the study they were feeding them yogurt, I think a whole grain bread, granola bars, and probably cereals. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, they're feeding them these healthy processed foods in the first 2 weeks. Then they switched and they fed them minimally processed foods, like NOVA classification 1 and 2. So meats, vegetables, things that were cooked but weren't processed. What was really fascinating, and they let the people eat as much as they wanted, right? Like, here's your buffet, and you can get the yogurt, or you can get the whatever when they were eating, right? What they found was the people in the first 2 weeks who were given the processed foods, the healthy processed foods, they ate an average of 500 calories more per day. And they gained an average of 2 pounds in that 2 weeks. When they switched the food and they matched the calories, right? So it's called isocaloric. When the study matches the calories, they gave them the same number of calories, not paying attention to protein or fat. But in those second 2 weeks, the people who ate the minimally processed foods lost 2 pounds. They also were doing blood tests that looked at markers of inflammation, and the markers of inflammation were lower in those second 2 weeks. So isn't that just kind of mind-blowing? I mean, we know that those ultra-processed foods are designed to make us want more and crave more. Often they're very low in protein, and our body's craving that to get adequate nutrition. But they ate 500 calories more when just allowed to eat whatever quantity. They naturally ate an average of 500 calories more, gained weight, had markers of inflammation in their blood. When they switched and did the other foods, anyway, it's really fascinating. You can look even at, if you go into the study links, you can look at like what they ate. Now, it was interesting to me because one of the guy who led the study was talking about the second 2 weeks where they did the minimally processed foods, that it was more expensive. It cost, I think he said 40% more. That really surprised me because my experience with buying, maybe it was because he was doing the ultra processed healthy stuff, that was more expensive. I'm sorry, that was, I don't know. But what really surprised me, because when I've bought things for like out of town guests or for the kids' friends or whatever, I felt like I've spent so much more money at the grocery store on the processed stuff than I would ever spend on just the plain groceries that I buy usually for David and me or for the family. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. I'd like to take a deeper dive in that and kind of see. But anyway, take a listen to it, because it also points toward some of the ultra processed stuff we use that is kind of expected or standard on a low carb diet. So anyway, really eye opening. And the other thing I'll tell you real quick, we are planning, hopefully we'll get some things sorted today, but we are planning to do, and this is for everybody, not just in the cooking community, but we're planning to do a 2-week challenge on, I think we're calling it soda swap. So getting rid of diet soft drinks and swapping that, trading that for other options, trading that for primarily water. But anyway, coffee's okay. Coffee's still on the list, as long as you don't put the ultra processed creamer in it, right? So anyway, but that's what I had for you today. Discussion of debt and diet and how similar those two are. I did not mean to do that. Sorry. Facebook automatically did fireworks for me. And tell you about the podcast study that I was listening to. And then mention that we're going to do the soda swap challenge. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Happy Monday. I hope that if you celebrate Mother's Day, you had a really nice Mother's Day too. I know I did. I felt very, very loved. All right. Y'all take care.